You have probably seen images of airdrops delivering food and supplies to Gaza, but the UN has warned this aid will not be enough to avert famine for the 500,000 people who desperately need it, and falling packages have reportedly killed several people in Gaza. So given both the risks and their general unreliability, what can airdrops actually achieve, and what exactly makes airdrops such difficult operations to pull off? On March 2nd, the US carried out its first airdrop together with Jordan. It provided Gaza's 2.3 million people with just 38,000 meals.
But the volumes are very, very minimal relative to need.
Jeremy Konyndyk oversaw the US government's disaster relief operations under the Obama administration. He says that considering the amount of aid they are able to deliver, airdrops are very costly compared to other methods.
But a good ballpark estimate is it's about 8 to 10 times more expensive to transport something by airlift than by road.
Then there are the logistical challenges. Firstly, what can be delivered?
So you need to drop things that are quite compact, that will survive the fall, and that give you a respectable amount of impact in terms of the needs relative to the volume of what you can deliver. You can imagine what happens if you drop a pallet full of plastic water bottles from a great height. It's pretty challenging.
And then, where it can be safely dropped to avoid injuring people below.
So generally you want a drop zone that is clear and open, that is flat, that is not built up, and where it is possible to keep people out of the way.
In the north of Gaza, Hamas officials and a hospital medic said 5 people were recently killed when an aid airdrop malfunctioned. Eyewitnesses said a parachute attached to a pallet failed to open and hit people on the ground. Other airdrops in Gaza took place near the beach, but that led to some packages landing in the sea. In some cases, strong wind has blown some of the aid into Israel. Lastly, and most importantly, there should be a team of people to coordinate on the ground and oversee the aid after it lands.
So making sure that they're aware, but most critically making sure that the food is then accessed and distributed to people most in need.
Aid organizations say humanitarian airdrops can be helpful when these conditions are met.
We've seen them used to meet immediate needs often in natural disasters. So in an earthquake or a flood or a cyclone, either civilian or military air bridges to get large supplies in, where you're then able to coordinate well and there's relative safety at the destination point.
Airdrops have been used in war zones before. Among the more recent, in 2014, the US military and the Iraqi army airdropped aid in northern Iraq when civilians from the Yazidi religious minority were trapped on a mountaintop as they fled militants from the so-called Islamic State. In conflict-stricken South Sudan, the World Food Programme was able to organize with teams on the ground. Since 2014, it has organized multiple aid drops for affected communities. But aid workers say this kind of coordination is not possible in Gaza at the moment.
There's limited or no communication with the communities. Aid workers can't move around in these places. It's far too dangerous.
There's no notification system that would alert people and make them ready to receive it. They just show up, they start dropping, shooting out these parachutes.
So if there are so many challenges to airdropping aid in Gaza, why are governments still doing it?
Often when military forces are used in a humanitarian operation, part of the intent there is to signal seriousness or signal that this is an important priority.
Relief agencies have accused Israel of restricting or blocking aid into Gaza. Damaged roads and ongoing hostilities make it especially hard to get any aid into the north.
The Israeli government has consistently obstructed aid into Gaza now for almost 5 months, even though there are border crossings that could be opened, even though there are routes that could be, that humanitarians can still move along within Gaza.
Israel denies the allegations and says it has facilitated the shipment of food and supplies. It blames problems on poor UN distribution in Gaza.
And the fact that the US government and others are resorting to this is another symbol of just how dire the situation has become.
Several different efforts are trying to bring more aid into Gaza, including a US plan to build a temporary port off the coast of the enclave and a maritime aid corridor spearheaded by the EU. But aid workers say a more meaningful solution is needed to solve the humanitarian crisis.
What we need is not an airdrop. It's a sustained ceasefire. It's political pressure to ensure an end to the siege, to allow a reopening of water and fuel, guarantees of safety for humanitarian actors to be able to coordinate and distribute aid effectively.
Aid should be delivered urgently, safely, but also in a human manner or human fashion that would, preserve the dignity of people.